Well, welcome to Seeking Healing, Finding Hope. This is the podcast where we're going to explore the roles of compassion, support, and professional help in overcoming shame and stigma in the recovery journey. I'm your host, Ann Madison. I'm the director of Peace Restored, which is a nonprofit that provides mental health care to women. Today, we're excited to continue our series on the topic of recovery with our special guest, Justin White.
Hey, Ann, so good to be with you tonight. Thanks for having me.
So, Justin is the recovery ministry leader at Mount Gilead Church and has served in the recovery community for 10 years. And he leads weekly support groups that averages about 130 participants. We're thrilled to have him join us today. So, Justin, let's dive into our discussion with our first question. What role does compassionate support play in helping individuals navigate feelings of shame and stigma in the recovery journey?
Yeah, I'm so glad we're talking about this tonight, and
Yep.
it's massive. This whole issue is massive, and it's vital in recovery as well. Because when an individual faces any kind of a mental health issue, what comes with that? Oftentimes shame,
Yes.
oftentimes
100%.
stigma,
Yep.
right? And so we want to address that. And whenever you're wrestling with shame and stigma, the natural result is isolation.
It is.
How many of us feel lonely, like we're
Right.
the only ones struggling in the midst of our pain and
That's
our
right.
dysfunction and our brokenness,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then what that does in our isolation, it keeps us from getting the help that we need.
It does.
I remember when my first taste of struggling with mental health was some severe depression.
Mm-hmm.
And I just remember wanting to be in my bed
Yep.
for days on end.
Mm-hmm.
It was a victory to walk to the stop sign at the end of my driveway and back, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's true for so many people
Right.
who wind up facing some sort of a mental health crisis, right? And so compassionate support really offers a non-judgmental and an empathetic space where people can feel understood and valued.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're not crazy.
Yep.
This is a real issue
Yep.
that millions of people face.
Yes.
And I can come to a place where I can be understood
Mm-hmm.
and embraced in that. It helps to dismantle the negative self-beliefs and the stigma that is internalized, right? That really are barriers to recovery. Because if I can't get out of bed, if I can't break the isolation,
Yep.
how in the world am I going to get better?
That's right.
Right. And so that's why compassionate support is just so important. When somebody knows they're not alone and that others genuinely care about their well-being, it makes all the difference. It changes everything about everything. I can still remember in my darkest days of depression, when I was battling depression, I went on to battle other mental health issues too, including addiction. We'll talk about that later, probably. I remember for 10 days, I was in my bed. I was really low, but there were two people that came by my house. I had no idea that they had faced their own similar depression. I remember they just came right up to my bed. I was a mess. I was numb, and all they said was, "Justin, I've been there, and you're gonna make it out.
That's right.
You're gonna overcome." And
that's huge.
Massive, massive. Years later, on my way to rehab after overdosing on opioids out of my opioid addiction, I got a call from a friend who confessed to me he was an alcoholic in recovery.
Right.
And that he would be with me, and he knew what I was going through.
He understood.
And I had no idea that he had struggled with that in his past. And from that point forward, our relationship changed. He gave me a little spark of hope in a moment when I had no hope.
That's right. Yep.
And that propelled me into a much better place.
Yep. I love the idea of being in community.
Yes.
Because that's what we're designed to be. We're designed to be in community.
Yes.
When we don't have that, that's where that isolation becomes stronger. Those roots of depression can go deeper.
Yes.
And we just disconnect, and we feel like that shame, that stigma just grows and grows, and we're just like, it feels like there's no hope.
First two chapters of the Bible. After God had created everything he had made, what does he say? It is good. Yes. It is good. It is good. But then he looks around and he says, actually, there is one thing that was not good. In Genesis chapter 2, he says, it is not good for the man to be alone.
Yeah.
And so what does he do? He creates community.
Yes.
We are designed for community.
That's right.
And especially in our moments of brokenness.
That's right. Because I think when we're in our brokenness, that's when sometimes we want to push away and say, I need to be alone. I don't need others.
Yes.
But that's when we need others the most.
Yes.
And I think we also have to stop thinking about it's them and us, whether you're in the place of recovery or you're the people who are supporting those in recovery. It's not about them versus us. It's about how can we support each other?
Yes. In our humanity.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I remember one piece of advice or an encouragement really that my father gave me when I was struggling is that he said, he told me, Justin, it's really our brokenness that unites us.
Mm.
So to your point about it's never really us versus them.
Yes.
It's only us. That's the only appropriate answer is us. Every person has some element of brokenness. And when we just accept that and learn to love each other through that's where power.
Yeah.
It's powerful, and there's healing, and there's overcoming in that
and
moment.
I think going back to what you said, it's where we learn about each other's stories.
Yes.
And those stories are so powerful because sometimes, again, those stories that we've all been through, we sometimes we kind of look at them through a lens of shame.
Yes.
I'm not good enough. I'm insignificant. I'm not worthy, whatever it may be. And so because of that, we don't feel like our stories have worth and value. And we put it through the lens of what went wrong instead of what God is doing through us.
That's exactly right.
And that community can help us kind of step out of that and go, wait, what, just like you said, like, I had no idea you went through that experience. I had no idea that you have similar lived experiences as me. And there's such a value in being around people who have that lived experience.
Yes.
Whether it's addiction or, they're working through recovery, whether they were abused, whatever it may be, there is a value in having this similar lived experience.
100%. The highlight of my day today is that I'm working with two recently graduated young men. They just graduated Mooresville High School. They're getting ready to go to college. One of them is really battling depression and struggling getting out of bed, doing the normal things of like being a kid. I mean, this should be a really happy time for him, and it's just not. And he is broken right now. He doesn't really know what's going on. He's confused. But this friend he battled this a year or two ago. He has stuck by his side the whole time. I mean, he's 18 years old, and he's like, man, I've been there. I get it. And I'm so proud of him, that he was willing, because he'd been there too.
That's right.
He was right there with his friend, and I'm convinced that his friend is going to make it through too.
Yeah, it is. I just can't speak enough on how powerful it is. I think, again, a part of that stigma reduction is we have to be comfortable with sharing our stories.
Yes.
Not everybody's going to get on a platform and want to be on a stage and share your story, but it doesn't have to be to that level. It can just be that friend who who's been through same experience. It's okay to say, I see you. And maybe you don't want to go to the depths of your story, but you can just say, I understand because I've been through this too.
Yes.
And sometimes, just like you had, that's enough.
Right.
That's all you need. It's that commonality of walking that out. But as we're kind of talking through this, I'm thinking, like, how can we continue to build on a community of recovery support, like build a network out?
Sure.
What are some things that we can do as individuals or as people in communities to help continue that?
Sure. Two main pillars. Let's talk about the two main pillars first. First off, it's about your own personal support network, right? So key. What we're talking about here would be like your own family. It starts with your own family, your close friends, your church, if you feel comfortable in that environment. A 12-step group, a support group, peer mentors. That provides this sense of belonging that I am not alone in this moment.
That's right.
I have people who know me. I know them. They love me. I love them. Massive. But I would also suggest there's a second pillar, because there's also there's always an opportunity and a blessing with safe, trusted professional help from a therapist or a counselor, medical professional for sure. That really can address from an objective standpoint the underlying issues, can help you develop some coping strategies when when you don't have any, or when when you're confused about
Right.
how do I navigate this particular moment. When you combine those two things, that is a 1-2
It
punch.
is.
I had when I was battling depression years ago, I had a great support group, but I didn't go to a counselor. I didn't go to a
Mm-hmm.
therapist. I didn't. This was all new to me. I didn't know
Right.
that's what you were supposed to do. Right.
Right.
I took some antidepressant medication even, and
Mm-hmm.
that was helpful
Mm-hmm.
in the moment.
Right.
But I didn't couple it with some well-founded, trusted therapy, and I
Mm-hmm.
really should have. Looking back, I should
Mm-hmm.
have. When I got into my addiction, I started going to a therapist. Actually, saw a couple therapists, did one-on-one therapy, did
Mm-hmm.
some group therapy. That changed my life.
Mm-hmm.
That addressed the real issues.
Yeah.
They helped me uncover what was underneath the
Like the
surface.
why
The
almost.
why.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. So I think really both those,
Mm-hmm.
it packs a good 1-2 punch, and it really
Yeah.
leads most people to a healthy spot.
Hi, I wanted to interrupt this episode to share a little bit with you about Peace Restored. I'm not sure if you're aware, but Peace Restored is a non for profit, and we rely on support from people just like you. Did you know that if you donate as little as $2 a month, it could provide curriculum for a woman that we provide mental health care to? Or $4 a month would help us provide mental health care for a woman just like yourself or someone that you care about. So if you would consider supporting us in our mission, please go to our website at peacerestored.net. Thank you so much for your time, and I hope you enjoy the rest of this episode. Yeah. A couple things that came to mind as you were talking, especially from the professional kind of therapeutic standpoint. One is that I think it would behoove us to say that not every therapist is created equal, or
Correct?
not every practice you go to is created equal. So I think for those listening, they want to make sure they do their due diligence,
Yes.
make sure they're finding a place that's qualified that really can be a good fit for them. Because just because they're providing services, it may not be the best fit for you, and it's okay
Yes.
to check out more than one place.
Oh man, I am so glad you said that. Um, I've talked to so many people who I've suggested to try therapy, and they said, "Oh,
Mhm.
I did that once, and I didn't like my
It didn't
therapist, so I
work.
quit."
Hmm.
It's okay
Yep,
to shop around
it
and do your
is. That's right.
research, you know?
We even tell people when they come to us, because we have women who come see us for therapy, and we'll be working with us like, it's okay if we're not the best fit for
Yes.
you. It is okay. You're not going to hurt our feelings.
Yes.
We'd rather you tell us like it's not going to work, and we'll help you find somebody else, which
Yes.
is probably different than what the response they might get other places. But our goal is to help you find the best care, not just to make you feel stuck with
Of
us.
course. Every therapist, every doctor, every
Hmm.
church, every 12-step meeting, they
Right.
all have their own,
Right.
strengths and weaknesses
That's
and
right.
personalities.
Hmm.
It's okay. If one doesn't work, keep going. You're gonna
That's right.
find one
You're
that
going to
does
find
work.
it because there's a personality to every place you go to, and
Yes.
you want to make sure that personality fits with yours. I think the other point to that is that we're talking about stigma in the recovery space,
Mhm.
but there's also a stigma sometimes still in our world of going to receive
Oh,
therapy. And so I think there's helping people understand that it is okay to ask for help.
yes.
And I think the other thing that possibly is it's okay not to be okay.
That's right. I will tell you, I was one for a long
Hmm.
time that was very apprehensive
Yeah,
about going to therapy.
me too.
And then I went and I kept going,
Hmm.
and it became the best hour of my
Yeah,
week.
yeah.
I felt so healthy and alive, and the therapist that I found that I
Hmm.
trusted helped me to see things from a new perspective
Yeah,
and interjected a jolt of energy and
yeah.
life again. And
Hmm.
can't say enough about finding the right therapist.
Yeah.
It could be a game
It's
changer.
so important. I
Mhm.
will say, I went through therapy myself, and I still see a therapist. But when I was in my early years of working through depression and things, I walked out. I will say from my experience, when I first went to therapy, I was very angry.
Mm.
I didn't like it.
Mhm.
I didn't want to be there. I was bitter. But the thing I appreciated about therapy was that they were consistent with me. They
Mm.
walked it out. It wasn't about they could handle my anger. They could handle my frustration. The person, they were able to stay present with me until I was in a space to where I could hear things differently.
Yes.
And that is such a benefit because I couldn't get that from just anybody, right?
Right.
Because when you're in those hard, deep, sometimes really dark places, you need someone who can help you walk that out and give you the tools to process what you need to process in a safe and healthy environment to where you
Yes.
can come out the other side healthier.
Yes.
And that's was my experience in walking through therapy. And man, if I wouldn't have had that, I don't know who I could have leaned
Yes.
into to that extent. And so I don't know if somebody's listening to this and they're thinking, how do I find the right therapist?
Mhm.
There's so many options out there for people to look to, websites.
Mhm.
And again, if they're listening to this, they can reach out to us and we're happy to refer them to places if we're not a good fit for them or they don't fit within our criteria. But I'm sure you recommend places. That's just a constant, like, how do I find the place? And I think a Google is a good place to start. It's probably not
Sure.
the only place to start, but that's a good place to start. I think for people listening, I always think about like a AACC, American
Mhm.
Association of Christian Counselors. You can go on there and they have a list of reputable counseling places that you can check out. So there's so many options to find
And
good
also
help.
ask around your
Right,
network.
right.
More and more people, I think,
That's
are
great.
taking advantage of mental health
Mhm.
services
Yep.
and providers. I really think, I don't know what you think about this, Anne, but to me, I mean, in the last several years that we've been leading in a
Mhm.
group in the recovery space, it seems like to me the stigma is
It is.
lessening.
It
Do you
is for sure.
agree?
Yes, I definitely feel like that needle is moving.
Yeah.
Is definitely becoming more acceptable. I think especially with the younger generation coming up,
Yes.
they've definitely been brought up in an environment where, okay, this is not as taboo.
Oh, I have
And
3 kids, 21 and younger.
mhm,
All 3 of them have
mhm,
already been
yeah,
to therapy
yeah,
and to counseling for various things, really through a lot of the trauma that we went through with our story, and had incredible,
yes,
experiences. It was so
so great.
positive. Yes,
Hmm.
so thankful for that.
Yeah, it's definitely shifted, and I'm grateful for that.
Mhm.
That as we continue forward, I think that we're going to continue to see that moving in a more positive direction.
Yeah,
And I think, and the other part I want to kind of touch on real quick is I think our churches, we need to become more embracing about
100%.
mental health. And because that's what we talk about on this podcast is how does mental health and faith intersect?
Mhm.
They're not separate from, in my opinion, because God made us as a holistic being.
Yes.
And so we need to, as a faith community, embrace how do we help the person heal as a whole and how do we bring faith into that as well and help
Oh,
those intersect.
if we're not,
Hmm.
we are missing the mark.
Yep.
Some people ask me, "What? You're a church. Why do you have a 12-step meeting
Hmm.
at your church?" And I've just learned to respond with a simple answer. I just tell them, "Look, if somebody is waking up passed out drunk every day and
Hmm.
hungover,
Yep.
if someone's high on opioids all
Hmm.
day or on meth, if somebody can't get through the day without going to certain websites,
Hmm.
how in the world can we get them to Jesus?"
That's right.
So we have to get real about the real
Hmm.
issues that people are facing.
Yep.
Let's talk about it. Take the stigma away, even
Hmm.
from the pulpit.
That's right.
Let's talk about the real issues. I think Jesus would.
Yep.
I think Jesus did.
Yep.
And let's be open, and
That's
then
right.
let's get to a place of health.
That's right. We can't pretend like they're not there
That's right.
and just continue to move forward and
That's
say,
right. People are tired of the religious masks
that's right.
anyway. Let's take the masks off. And
Yep.
by the way, I was number one offender of wearing masks in
Yep.
my life as a pastor. I was
Yep.
scared to death of people thinking that I had problems,
Yep. Same.
which, you know what that did? It led me to a further and deeper
Yep.
problem.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah. And so when the mask was finally ripped off,
It's freedom.
oh, freedom.
Hmm.
Freedom is the only word for it.
Hmm.
And I could finally be myself
That's
and be
it.
comfortable in
Yeah.
my own skin, and praise God that that happened.
Yeah.
Took
It
some
is.
pain to get there.
Yes, it does, but it's worth it. I
It
think
is
that's
worth
the
it.
message that we can give to people
Yeah.
is it's going to be hard. We're
Yeah.
not trying to say this journey is easy, but if you will trust the process, I know that's a kind of an overused saying,
Right.
but if you trust the process and you do the hard work, there's such a reward on the other side.
That's right. That's
There
right.
really is.
It's worth it.
It is. So as we continue our conversation, let's kind of shift a little bit and let's talk about some practical ways
Mhm.
individuals can practice maybe self-compassion
Sure.
and acceptance to overcome maybe some of that shame and self-judgment, because we've kind of touched on a little bit because those things can become disabling.
Shackles.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Just a few ideas on this. First one would be just mindfulness,
Mm-hmm.
being present in the moment, aware of your own thoughts and feelings, understand that just because you feel something
Mm.
bad doesn't mean you're
That's right.
bad.
Nope.
You know, sometimes those things just happen, just like we were talking
Yep.
about a minute ago. Embrace it. Understand this is how I'm feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Be present in the moment. Number two would be just those basic self-compassion exercises.
Mm-hmm.
Engage in activities like writing self-compassion letters, where you're addressing yourself, being kind to yourself,
Mm-hmm.
empathetic to your own situation, just like you would to any other friend. Be a friend of yourself,
Mm-hmm.
right? Kind of along with that, number three would be positive affirmations. Just
Mm-hmm.
getting in that rhythm of regularly affirming your worth, your
Yeah.
strengths. I preached a sermon at my church this last week, and I took 4 minutes. I think his name is Neil Anderson.
Mm-hmm.
He wrote down 100 Bible verses
Yeah.
that spoke to what our identity is in Christ. And I just read that in the middle of the
That's
sermon,
right.
4 minutes. Took 4 minutes to get through,
Mm-hmm.
but it was powerful for me to find that and to hear that and
Mm-hmm.
absorb that. That when a person is outside of Christ,
Mm-hmm.
that's where we find brokenness
Yeah.
and loneliness and dysfunction. But once we come to Him and put our trust in Him, surrender to Him, we become a friend of Christ. We are safe in Him. We are provided for,
Mm-hmm.
redeemed, forgiven, made whole
Mm-hmm.
again, right? So just things like that, positive affirmations, reminding yourself who you really are.
Who we are. Yeah. Because there's truth. Because
Yes.
filtering through truth of who we are, not through feelings of who we are.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank goodness the feelings, our feelings are not the Lord of the universe.
That's right. Because if they are, I would be
Bad
it
news,
would be
right?
some bad days. Yeah.
Bad news.
There
Yes.
are some bad days
Yes.
because we do embrace our feelings sometimes
Yes.
too much.
Well, they're so powerful. Yeah. So positive affirmation. Number four would be therapy and counseling, much like we've been talking about. Really go out there and find one that works for you. And if you go to one and it's not a good fit, it's okay.
That's right.
That's normal.
It's fine.
Right? Keep looking. Number five, journaling. I know a lot of people.
I really love journaling.
Are you a journaler?
Mm-hmm.
I have to be honest. I'm like hit and miss.
Yeah, I don't do it every day, but I love it as a coping skill.
Yes.
Like when I'm really in a space where I'm trying to process stuff, that's when I journal. I think sometimes I'm not an all or nothing journaler.
Okay.
I think journaling I think it's something you can pick up and you can put down.
Yes.
And that's how I like journaling.
That's freeing. I'm glad to hear you say that.
Yeah. Because I think some people think you have to journal every day.
Right.
And I think it's just a good tool. So like right now I'm in a journaling stage because there's some things I'm processing, I'm working out. So I don't even journal every day. It's several times a week maybe. And it's just when I feel the need to.
Yeah.
And so
the best time I've had journaling was when I was doing my fourth step in the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. Some of you might have heard of that or been through that yourself. But fourth step is really where you journal your inventory. You make a searching and fearless moral inventory where you list your fears and your resentments and the ways you've been hurt and the ways you've hurt other people. And I just remember, like I said, I'm not a journaler, but in that exercise, there is something about putting a pen or pencil to paper,
there is
writing out, and the things that came up in that process they led to healing. It was therapeutic. So journaling, a couple more, just connecting with others, finding a good support group, or maybe if you go to church, a small group or a Bible study or men's group or ladies group, just hearing other people's stories. It again leads to that connection piece and that the community. I'm not on my own here. I'm not crazy. I've got other people with me. And then just try to set some realistic goals. We always tell people who come to our recovery meeting the first night, they're overwhelmed and they're ready for relief. We're realistic with them, and we tell them there's that phrase, you didn't get into this situation overnight.
That's right.
You're not going to get out of it overnight.
Yep.
Okay. So we always tell people, look, just get through this hour. Get through this meeting.
Yep.
You made it to the meeting. Awesome.
Yep.
Okay.
That's a huge step.
Huge step. You're going to be here. You're going to be here for an hour. And guess what? You're going to be sober for an hour. And you're going to be around good people, healthy influences for an hour. Right. Don't worry about what happens after this hour. Just enjoy this hour, and then that's the goal. And then they make that goal. And then before they leave, you kind of think through with them, okay, what's the next goal? What's the next step? Do you like What About Bob, that movie? Have you
No,
ever
I
seen
don't
it?
think I've ever seen it.
Okay, it's my favorite movie. You need to watch this.
I might have seen it. I'm really bad at remembering the names of the movies I've seen.
Okay, it's Bill Murray, and he's a patient
Okay.
who's struggling with various mental health
I might have seen
issues.
that one.
Richard
Yeah. Okay.
Dreyfuss is the
Okay.
counselor, therapist.
Sounds familiar.
And over the course of the movie, they basically switch roles.
Okay.
Okay, so Bob, who's the patient, Bill Murray's
Okay.
character, he gets healthy, and the therapist kind of gets crazy. And it's a comedy. It's kind of funny.
Yeah.
But they have this book in there, and it's called Baby Steps.
Oh, yes.
Right?
Yep.
That is just about taking the next step forward, the next step forward,
the next right step,
the next right thing, next right step.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it is, I think sometimes when we go into either a space of recovery or mental health, some of us, I was guilty of that. It's I got to get it all done right now.
Yes.
And I was like, I got to figure this out because I'm a doer, and I'm like, if we're gonna do this thing, let's get it done. Like, can we get this done in a week? Like,
and addicts are really bad at this. We like instant gratification.
Yes.
Right. And so that's for starting out, people who are starting out recovery, it's oftentimes difficult to get them to stick with it because they're so used to, I'm going to take this drink because I know it's going to make me feel like X, Y, or Z. I'm going to take this drug because I know what it's going to make me feel like. Right. And recovery doesn't work that way. Counseling
doesn't
and overcoming any mental health challenge doesn't work that way.
It doesn't.
It takes some time.
It does. And I think that's hard for us as humans in general to rationalize with and just be able to be at peace with. This is going to be a journey.
Yes.
It's going to be slow. Some days it's going to be really hard.
Yes.
But recognize that that's okay.
Yes. Marathon, not a sprint.
That's right. Well, those are some really good practical tips. I always love having in a podcast those practical solutions because I think we can talk about ideas and concepts, but if we don't have like a way to put action to those steps, it can sometimes feel like, what do I do?
Yes.
How do I do this? So I love that we had those practical suggestions. I appreciate, Justin, you sharing your insight and expertise with us today.
Oh, pleasure, Ann. Thanks so much for having me today.
Thanks. Well, and thank you to our listeners for listening to this episode of Seeking Healing, Finding Hope. Remember, if you or someone you know is struggling with shame and stigma in their recovery journey, compassionate support, strong networks, and professional help can make all the difference. So until next time, make sure to take care of yourself and be kind.